Welcome, everyone. Very happy to be here with all of you. Today, we're going to talk about the state of strategy execution around the world. And a bit of context, I'm Eli, founder of OKR Mentors, and I'm very glad to be here with all of you today. Feel welcome to use the chat, interact. The team is here and is going to answer any questions you have. Feel also welcome to share where you call from. I call from Barcelona today. The world is changing fast. Pandemic, geopolitical changes, technology disruption, all industries are impacted. Organizations are required to adapt and transform faster and better than ever. An organization's ability to evolve and execute their strategy has become more than critical. It's not a nice to have anymore. This is a survival skill. And if managed properly, it becomes a thriving skill. On the reality, we see that execution and strategy are still very often disconnected. That is became the success factor to bridge the gap for companies. We've been spending the last 18 months doing research, building a maturity model, comparing 200 companies, and eventually sharing this global benchmark. And this work has been done with a lot of experts around the world that we've been working with and partners. We first shared the CEO guide of strategy execution, beginning of September. Then we shared the global benchmark a few weeks ago. Today is a special day because we're going to reveal a new product by the end of the session, a product that is going to help you on your path to better strategy execution. And you'll be able to start using it as of today. So make sure to stay until the end for the reveal. More than a presentation, we wanted to make this session practical, insightful, and actionable. This is why I invited 3 leaders who help in their own way organization build high-performance system to execute strategy. Manish is a veteran in strategy and operations in tech space. He worked at Intuit, Google, Meta, eBay, and more. Lola is an operation excellence leader at Givaudan. She's been working there, making an impact in this global industrial organization that has activity all over the world. And Jeff is always making sure that organization put value and customer city front and center and leverage his expertise and know-how in UX, product, and OKR. So very glad to have the 3 of them with us today. Hi Manish, hi Jeff, hi Lola. And Jeff is gonna host the conversation while I'm gonna share some insights from the research, and we're gonna hear from Lola and Manish what it is from their perspective and experience on the field. So without further ado, welcome everyone. In the name of OKR Mentors, I wish you a great session all together with us. And Jeff, ball over to you.
Amazing. Thanks, Ellie. Hey, folks. It's a pleasure to be here. Always enjoy collaborating with OKR Mentors. And I think they've done some tremendous work with this report. And so if you haven't had a chance to read it, we're going to get through some of the highlights during this conversation. And then what we've tried to do is structure an interesting conversation for you, really just kind of take some of the conclusions, some of the findings from the report, and get perspectives from Lola and from Manish and from Ellie, et cetera, about how they're seeing some of the findings, which are actually really interesting. There's some really interesting stuff in there that surprised me. And since most of you have probably not, most on the call at least, have not had a chance to go through the strategy execution report fully, I want to start with some high-level surprises from the panel. So specifically, we'll start with Lola first. What insight from the report itself did you find most surprising in there?
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
So definitely many wows and aha moments on the report. So for the ones who have not read it, just go for it. But for me, a fundamental and quite basic one was just that I was not expecting the align to be the highest scoring axis actually. I understand that setting few priorities and communicating them is well understood by senior management, but actually translating them into team objective in a meaningful way and creating initiative that will have an actual impact in the outcome goals and will be manageable with the existing pool of resources is much of a tricky one. So earlier in my career, I learned the DAC leadership model, the define, align, and commit. And that has stayed with me ever since. And I've always experienced, maybe because I've been in companies which are quite consensus based, it's been definitely that the align was taking the most effort.
Amazing. And it's interesting because the first deep dive we're going to take in the conversation is going to be about alignment and do we really have alignment? So we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Manish, what surprised you in the report?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Great point, Lola. Welcome, everybody. So for me, I think, Jeff, there was like lots of interesting points, but the one that stood out for me was the role of AI, especially in context of what it means for strategy and execution, and both as people who actually are at the giving end of that function, but also at the receiving end of that function. Namely in two contexts, right? So one is AI is definitely going to be a disruptor in this craft, in this field, but it's going to create more pressure for people to actually like, there's going to be more data, more faster analysis, more work that is going to get created upstream. But the ability to actually like execute will still be constrained by processes, systems, and definitely human intervention, right? So lots of like thinking to do in that context of like how do we make leverage of the AI capabilities, but also like bring in humans and people and professionals in these spaces to actually make the power of the two, like human plus AI, greater than the sum of the parts. So I'm excited about that.
That's going to be really interesting, I think, ultimately, because I mean the AI tools that we have available to us should certainly amplify execution. The question is, are we strategically executing? We'll talk about that too. We got a question about that too. Ellie, you've had the most insight into the report as it's been taking shape. What surprised you in the findings?
Yeah, well, on our side, there were a lot of insights there that were more a reaffirmation of the work we do with organizations. So it helped us put evidence and data on top of that. I think zooming out, the element that really was the most impactful to us was that there is only 10, 11% of organizations that really master strategy execution. So what does it tell us? It tells us that there is a lot of room of improvement and opportunities for organizations. And also linked to that, that these top performers, we could also see through our research that they have a much better business performance. So 57% of them exceed their financial goals, 83% of them grow faster than their competition. So it really proved the correlation between better strategy execution and better business performance, which I think is very empowering for strategy operation professionals and transformation leaders to show the ROI of investing in improving the systems and the way the organization execute their strategies.
I mean, look, it's clearly a competitive advantage, right? If you can do this well, you're going to succeed it. So that the effort is actually worth it. Amazing. Let's jump into it a little bit into a bit more detail here. So Lola mentioned alignment as a surprise for her. Let's talk about alignment. Yeah, the report says that organizations score highest on align as sort of their where they think they're doing particularly well, but then they struggle with scaling and improving the work. We make a lot of effort, leaders do, inside organizations to communicate alignment for coordination. And the interesting thing is, are we actually, because we're expending so much effort on communicating the strategic vision, are we actually seeing an illusion of alignment where everyone says, yes, 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 I know what the strategy is, but nothing actually connects? And so my question to the group, and we'll start with Manish this time around, what if our obsession with communicating strategy is actually counterproductive and we're creating a false confidence that says, look, as a leader, I've done my job, I've communicated successfully, but the harder work of building the financial systems, the technical systems, the operational systems that make strategy real is sort of deprioritized because, look, I've done the communication part. Is there does the clarity of alignment can create complacency? That's my question.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeff. I think to be quite honest, I'll take that as a win in terms of like having at least the perception of alignment, right? Rather than having nothing around alignment. It's good to know that people and leaders are actually like acknowledging that. But you're absolutely right. Like I think alignment is necessary but not sufficient. I also challenge whether alignment really, like when it comes out in the report, are people actually like truly like understanding alignment and what is the success metrics for it? How are they thinking about what is alignment? As you rightly challenging that maybe communication is like a success metric that they're using versus like truly like the organization actually like using the strategy as a basis of actually like deciding where to prioritize and where not to prioritize, making hard choices and making like systems agile enough to actually react to some of those things. I think so. I agree with your push on that in that context, but I do agree that it's sort of like a sort of a mini win for all of us to actually see some sort of like points around alignment. But definitely journey 1% done in terms of that concept. More pushing needs to be done. And it definitely needs to start with alignment, right? Like it definitely needs to start with like a clarity of strategy, a clarity of vision, a clarity of like leaders buying into it, and then we have to like take on the battle of actually like making sure that slowly we are actually like following through in our tools and the systems and are like making sure that the organization is catching up, right, in terms of actually executing that. One of the for if I may have one more minute, Jeff.
Sure.
One other concept that we used to talk about at Intuit used to be the concept of like, sometimes you mentioned the word coordination or communication, but I think the word we started to sort of use is orchestration, which is like, hey, you can be aligned, you can be like coordinated, but you need to be orchestrated. Like the sum of parts needs to be greater than the whole. The organizations in general are pretty well staffed, or if they are actually like focused in a way that actually like drives that strategy and that vision clarity, should be able to deliver. And so how do we drive that orchestration is the concept that we were challenging ourselves with.
That's super interesting. Yeah, I've seen more than one organization have a key result that counted how many people could repeat the strategy.
Yeah.
But so what? You can repeat the strategy, right? Lola, what have you seen on this? Is how do we get past sort of this alignment? And I'm not saying it's theater necessarily, right? But it could potentially become alignment theater. Sure, I know the strategy, right? Like, what have you seen?
So when you asked the question, right, I was thinking like that it didn't actually feel to me that we are over communicating necessarily, especially in my company. Very often, people will say, I actually understanding the what and the why reasons behind is really valuable. And if anything, I think what's made this sort of not just communicate and nodding, as you said, but really connecting is really this ability to have it in a two-way, right? So really the leadership spending time with smaller teams to sit down, communicate and hear it back. Because as you said, the same wordings, the same things may mean different things, either because you have different perspective, different understandings, etc. So I didn't feel like it was less, but definitely, I really agree with you, Jeff, that is definitely an overestimate the impact it will have. So if people think like this is taking you a long way, that would be a true illusion. And in terms of like getting the hands dirty and in putting the systems, I wanted to share with the community that although in Givaudan we've been driving ops strategy execution for many years, this is actually the first year that we have piloted OKRs at the global level. And for me, it was really inspiring to see some of the leaders and the sponsors who actually jumped into the proposed weekly rhythms with some strong accountability. And, as you said, getting your hands dirty. And they were up for the humility and the discipline that proposed. So to a certain extent that even, at some point I proposed to expand or have the role as the OKR champions to help us go on the scalability. And they said, no, let us first be the first guides and the first to learn and the first. So probably, and even talking with Ellie at some point, it can be over an extreme because do they have the time? Do they have the accountability to do it? But in initial stages, it was really something to see. So yes, but the ones who actually see the benefit of getting their hands dirty, they are probably the ones who they realize that the benefits of it.
Amazing. Ellie, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there are very interesting truths shared by Manish and Lola. So I will answer with two hats. I think one as working with leaders for years now and sharing what I thought, and then the research insights. I think that from an alignment perspective, there are three levels. There is the intellectual level, like do I understand what are the priorities, what's the strategy? Then there is the emotional level, like do I buy into it? Does it give me sense, motivation, and so on? And then there is to integrate it physically. And I think that's the same for organization. I think that often leaders might think that intellectual understanding is enough, but they need to go a step further. And for that, you need to communicate the why. You need to communicate the why now. You need to help the team understand how they contribute themselves. And this is not just a one-off; it's a continuous work. So it's also why talking about systems and how do you implement it makes a lot of sense. Now, if we look from a research perspective. I'm gonna share, the key highlights from our research in terms of strategy execution maturity. You can see here there are 5 dimensions. The first one is alignment, so strategic alignment. The second one is execution. The third one is improvement. And then there are 2 amplifiers, the ability to scale with systems, and then the empowerment, which is linked to the culture and the mindset. And what we see is that in general, the average is 63.5. So a lot of room of improvement. We've mentioned it before. Leaders have more than 90 in average. So these are the top 11%. And when you look at actually the score per dimension with actually alignment being indeed on top in general, you can see that the leaders actually follow through much more. They go beyond communication and general alignment, but they integrate it in the way of working. And I think this is how you create alignment, not only at an intellectual level, but also in the way the teams work. And that's what makes the difference. So if you look at basically the execution and the improvement, the difference is massive between the average and the strategy execution leader. And this is where I believe indeed the follow through is very important to make alignment a real alignment and not just an intellectual alignment.
Yeah, the interesting challenge will be how do we know, right? Because, if we're just counting nodding heads in that situation, that ultimately doesn't really tell us. And so we really have to see the actual execution follow, which, thank you, Ellie, which leads me to kind of the next question we're going to cover here. And this particular question is very near and dear to my heart because I've been working professionally now for 25 years, and I feel like I've been having the same conversations for 25 years. And this question is about that. Some of the challenges to successful strategic execution that the report raised are things that we have seen forever, over and over and over again. A lack of a clear strategy, rigid commitments, right? Organizations unwilling to shift their commitments despite what's happening in the marketplace, what's happening with technology, et cetera. Personal politics inside an organization or personal agendas being driven. And we have decades of books and frameworks and consultants and keynotes and whatever addressing all of these issues. And so there's no way that the folks who are struggling to execute their strategy successfully aren't aware of this stuff, which means that there's something else as a root cause here. And so my question to the group, and Lola, we'll start with you this time. what if poor strategy execution isn't a knowledge gap problem, but rather it's a symptom of deeper issues that we are more difficult to confront. Things like misaligned incentives, or I fear there's a risk to my career if I speak up against the plan, or leaders. There are certainly going to be leaders who benefit from ambiguity rather than clarity and alignment. So, like, what if that's actually the root cause of strategy execution challenges, and what do we do about it?
Ooh, that's a powerful one.
Yeah,
And
please solve the last 25 years of my career. I really would appreciate that.
yeah. So basically, I think any company or organization at the end is made by individuals, right? At least in our times, they're waiting for the full AI unleash. But I think it's the sum of everyone's values, behaviors, and actions at the end what will determine the real value, not again on something what is written in paper. So it is inevitable that the human factors will play a role. So in my experience, when power dynamics or incentives or even personal preferences, as you mentioned, have played a role, I have strongly put in place more the transparency and simplicity practices that can go across many different uses, right? And because those factors will play a role. Even last week, I was sitting with a work colleague that actually is not in Givaudan, and he was telling me that he's stuck leading a project in which he's having to implement a tool that is actually not going to work. He knows that, and he knows this is because of they were one of the stakeholders was really like pushing for the solution because of personal preferences or biases. So I think more and more, this doesn't have space in businesses, and it has less of a role. But of course, if we neglect that this exists, we'll be fooling ourselves. It's almost that image that comes into my mind of the iceberg, right? That the usuals will be alignment, execution, this and that. But yeah, we are humans, and all those aspects will play a role. So a little bit like linking it to the AI notion. Yeah, the AI notion will help us a lot in the technicalities. But if we want to master the human part of it, that's where we will be able to make a big difference, I feel.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the interesting thing, right? I'm gonna ask Manish the hard part of the next, not the hard part, but the next part of this hard question, which is, how do we solve for this? We know this, right? This is this isn't a big secret. Again, given the amount of material that's out there addressing these issues, again, like misalignment, misaligned incentives, and people who benefit from ambiguity, et cetera. How do we begin to fix this, especially when it comes to execution, Manish?
Yeah, I wish I had a silver bullet, and
Come on,
we should all
man.
we should all drop off from the call and like go and execute and set up multi-million-dollar companies. Um, but I think this reasoning here is circular, right? Like I feel like I go back to like strategy, having clarity of strategy, having purpose, having clarity of mission and vision, having goals, OKRs, etc., is like a means to an end to actually driving that clarity that you're seeking as well, Jeff, right? So I know that you're challenging that it's not enough, but I feel like that is the beginning. And I think for me, I think a lot of it comes down to like having shared understanding, having clarity of that, bringing in people early in the process, making sure that everybody is fully on board, and we create a culture where people are actually like having the right incentive to speak up, to actually challenge, and to actually like come up and actually like incentivize. So instead of having OKRs which are measuring only business success, should there be OKRs around like culture values and failures being being celebrated, being challenged, being agility being introduced, etc. So I don't have a silver bullet, to be quite honest, Jeff, but I feel like a lot of it is like, I think this is why we do this job, is because it's hard. This is why we do it, because we know how to bring people along and drive that alignment that we were talking about. This is why we do it, because I think process is what's going to get us like freedom from some of these discussions. And how do we do it where we get everybody from in the organization to actually like be orchestrated in the right direction, right? So sorry, I don't have a better answer on that, but hopefully you get a sense of where I'm going.
No, I agree with you. Look, I mean, and the, I don't think that the answer is, well, we'll just solve everything all at once, right? I think it's figuring out the small steps that
Yeah.
will pick away at this over time and improve and get this out of the way so that teams can be more successful. Ellie, what about you? What have you seen in this context?
I guess it could take one, two, or three books to answer this question. There are many things behind that. I'm going to try to focus on 2 points I find again and again. Most of the time when I start working with leadership teams and also debriefing with our team of experts, we see that the main challenge is leaders don't confront directly their core challenges, either because they are not aware of them, meaning they feel the symptom maybe, but they don't know the root cause, or because they know them, but it's uncomfortable.
Mm.
Say it, for example, hey, we have clear priorities. And then you ask everyone, what are the priorities? And then you end up with 66 priorities.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's more comfortable to have a somewhat alignment, but then leave some ambiguity for protecting the relationship, for protecting the people. Um, it requires trade-off, it requires tough decision, it requires to let go. Good strategy execution is simple but not easy. And I think that's the first point is, hey, let's confront the challenges we have and let's address them. Let's not let them drift into our business as usual of working. I think that's the first one. And the second one, which is a statement I heard actually from an innovation leader a few weeks ago in a talk, and it really kept with me, which is whatever allowed us to be successful until today is what is slowing us down now. And it really resonated with me in the sense that when we start our professional lives, and this is the same for an organization, so it applies for an individual, but also for an organization. We are curious, we are open-minded, we try new things, we fail, we try again, we build up some recipes, and then somehow it works, and then we become successful, we become market leaders. And then when we become market leaders, we think we know it all. And so we don't challenge ourselves anymore. We're less open-minded, we're less curious, we're less eager to test, to fail, and we lose a bit of that curiosity as leaders, but also as organization. For me, that's one of the key elements that I think is behind that. And when diving into the research, we find that this is true. So if we look at the top performers, you see that they invest in training teams so that they are competent to execute, have the right skills, the psychological safety, and the aptitude. We also see that they encourage experimentation and learning from failure much more than the rest of the organizations. And also they have processes to actually get rid of strategies that don't work. And for that, you need to be able to accept it. You need to be able to recognize it, acknowledge it, and let it go. And I think this requires a lot of courage, and that this is one of the key elements that helps organization really move from the theory to practice of, hey, let's be good at strategy execution. Let's put the playbook in place. So we know we're going to fail. We know we're going to learn. Let's be curious. Let's do it together.
Yeah. Barry O'Reilly wrote a great book a few years ago called Unlearn. And it's a brilliant book. It's short and it's an easy read, and it talks about exactly this, about taking the ideas that have gotten us this far and realizing that they won't get us to the next level and unlearning them so you can learn new things. And really where this comes down to, I'll just add my 30 seconds of 2 cents here, is I think that if leaders are going to take advantage of the body of work that can help make things better and this type of unlearning, there has to be some humility in them and in the organization that allows them to say, look, okay, this got me this far. I now need to learn something new to get me to the next thing. And I think that that's discouraged in leaders a lot to say, hey, I was wrong, or I've exhausted my knowledge and now I've got to go learn something new. And I think that's part of the issue here, at least. But Good.
Jeff,
Yeah, please.
just maybe one more thing before we move to the next thing is, again, obviously as a professional and driving business strategy, but also as a mom of 3 little monkeys under 6 years old. I mean, what you've been saying in the last few minutes is really relevant because you brought this element of curiosity, Ellie, on the table. But there's also an element of role modeling, right? And I know there's not a magic bullet to solve that. But if I could choose one thing to start with or one thing to do, it would be that element of consistency and coherence with really leaders, starting from the top and starting to cascade down to really play as role models on these things. I've seen it, and I've experienced it, the power that it has, right, on role modeling. So, showing the right incentives, the right decisions, the right humility, you put all those things and it has an amazing, I would say, cascading effect.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Modeling the behavior that we want to see is incredible. I'm going to take 30 seconds for a quick story to share about that as well, and then we'll move on. Years ago, I was helping a bank with an agile transformation, and after a meeting with the president of the bank, he had to go have a meeting with his 150 direct reports, and he said 3 words to them. He said, "Agile is hard." And they were so thrilled. They were just so thrilled that he had recognized that what they were doing was difficult, that there wasn't a clear answer to it. He was showing a little bit of humility, a little bit of understanding, and a bit of compassion. And all of a sudden, all of that starts to cascade through an organization as well. So you're absolutely right. Modeling that behavior is key. All right, let's get into the the elephant in every single conversation these days, which is artificial intelligence, AI. Look, there is a tremendous amount of potential with AI and the tools that we have accessible to us today and that are coming up, whether it's better data analysis, automation, decision support. But the report, right? The strategy execution report shows that excellence in execution comes from the human disciplines, learning loops. We just talked about humility, retrospectives, which it was a manifestation of humility and learning, and a willingness to say, we're not going to work on this anymore. We're going to work on something else anymore. And so my question to you folks, and Manish, maybe you can go first this time, is AI going to increase the potential for better strategy execution across companies of all sizes? Or are we just going to enable people to just make more stuff, regardless of whether it's strategically aligned or not?
Yeah, I think company size or dimension might be like one variable to think about success or failure from AI use for strategy execution. Jeff, I would say linking it back to the previous point that we were having about like acceptability of some of these things in terms of like, hey, AI is going to change dramatically the context of our competition, about a customer, about a category. So it's not like something that you can like be passive about. You have to be proactive about. And companies which accept, irrespective of size, will and get on the journey faster, knowing that it's going to be disruptive, are the ones which are going to succeed, right? And so it's the same with strategy and execution craft as well, right? So it's not like it's something that we can be passive about. It's something that we'll have to be extremely like clear in terms of where it's going to be our friend and where it's going to be something that we'll have to like deal with it. Now, every company is going to go through its journey differently. Every person is going to go through that journey differently. So there isn't like a cookie cutter sort of like one size fits all sort of an approach. But my sense is we are going to be asked to do, I'm sure like many people already feel it, to do more with less. In the world where AI is actually going to create even more pressure in terms of like faster data analysis, faster sort of execution. But I think the magic is going to happen when we rationalize it through our human judgment, right? And this is where we bring sort of like calm to the chaos. As strategy and execution professionals, we need to like set up systems and processes. We need to be able to like, understand insights from noise and be able to like, use that information as from a growth mindset perspective of actually like creating our own calibrated systems where we can actually like say, hey, this is something that we need to go faster on, and this is place where we actually can go slower on. Um, I think I see a lot of like help from AI, right? In terms of like, both from a day-to-day perspective, but also like a pull demand for strategy and execution in general, right? It's going to actually like create even more sort of friends for us from how the organization would need us from actually being able to get the benefit that they need. Because everybody is like in the same state. Like nobody's won the war on AI. Nobody is actually like far ahead than the others. Everybody is actually operating, and this is where the power of the community is going to be super powerful. And so, Ellie and team, whatever you guys are doing, would be extremely beneficial.
Yeah. I was I was at an AI conference today, actually, for most of
Mm.
the day, and I was underwhelmed by what was presented. And it feels like everyone is using it and everyone is accelerating so quickly with it. But then you go to these public gatherings and there's a lot of folks who are like, I don't really know what to do with this or how to deal with it or how it might help me. Lola, what are you seeing in your experience when it comes to AI as an accelerator for the right type of strategic execution, or just execution, or none of that?
Hmm. I think AI at the moment, is like we put all our investments and thoughts that it will resolve everything, and and probably, it will be. I mean, I think that there's no doubt that everyone deeply knows that it's going to be a game changer, right? For companies, for industries, and it's not something that you can opt out. But maybe a little bit like communication, we are overestimating, especially if at some point, it becomes the level of democratization will also maybe play a role, right? So if everyone kind of taps into it, then maybe it's not so much the cutting edge differentiator. But I still think like AI, the way I see it, right, and until proven differently, is more of the notion of being a copilot, being your extended brain. If you are set for failure today, you put it in AI, it will amplify the failure. If you are being mediocre, you put it through AI, you get a bigger mediocre, and if you're excellent, yeah, it will probably accentuate your excellence into it. For the moment, I think at least in our playground, I would say we are using it a lot as as I call it, as an ignition source. So I think we all use it as the first draft, for objective setting, for creating project plans, for getting a quicker access to knowledge, summarizing. But we always depend on us sanity checking it, fine tuning it, owning it, validating it, right? I'm struggling to see that it will just fix your own problems or pilot on its own. But it's also difficult to put all your bets in there. But of course, I'm still expecting to have a lot more capabilities being explored, especially in the terms of having even helping on these feedback loops, right? With more on-time metrics, with having better correlations, with helping you predict potential risks. And you said about launching a lot of new projects and stopping and not stopping them, because this is part of the behavior where we see it as leadership. But why not expect that it will also help us stopping them? If you're making it blindly obvious that something has diminishing proven value or is very slow. But again, on itself, I can see us being stuck in front of AI analytics telling us that we should stop A, B, and C, and us as human having hundreds of different arguments for why we shouldn't stop it. So, the battle, I think it's still there.
I love that. And you don't hear that a lot, Lola. I think that's a unique point, that we can use the AI tools to support decisions for what not to do or what to stop doing. And I think that again comes with a level of maturity that a lot of organizations still don't have, right? Because still, I can tell you from my experience, the overwhelming majority of the organizations that I deal with value production, the making of stuff, right? The delivery of output is still the value. But I love this idea of, can we take the AI tools to support decisions to actually stop producing the wrong things or stop working on things? Ellie, what are you seeing on that front?
You're on point, Jeff, with your last comments, as this is also what the research shows. Like, the fundamentals are, what do we use to make decisions? What guides our decisions? And you can see here that 70% of leaders use real-time data. That's the base, right? And then also, how do you define success? So indeed, with a lot of organization define success by what they deliver, what they produce, while the top leaders define it by measurable outcomes. And for that, you need data. And for that, you need to find it, select it, gather it, create spaces to talk about it, and make decisions based on that. We see also that they tend, much more than the others, to use integrated system and technologies to basically make the data available, provide it, make it accessible for the teams, and allow them to work from that. And so the idea is to move from data to insights and from insights to action. I think their AI is a bit like a motor for a car. If you have a very, very good motor with AI, but you don't know how to drive the car, you're going to make accidents faster. If you know how to drive it, then you're going to be able to go very, very fast, very, very far. And I guess AI here acts as an amplifier. If you're good with it, if you have the fundamentals right and the right, let's say, system, then you're going to be able to innovate faster, innovate better, decide faster, decide better. But if you don't have the right fundamental, it will be more initiative, more overload, more confusion, more ambiguity, more indecision, etc., etc. So totally aligned with what everyone shared here. We see more and more products and technologies that are integrating AI to help gather that data, make it available, and help teams work with strategy execution among the partners that we worked with on this research, Workboard and Profit. So there are things happening. It's start to structure. There are innovations that are very cool. It's moving very fast. So you always need to be on the look for the last innovation there and make sure you use it properly within the system and fundamentals.
Amazing. Okay, I've got time for one more question. I really want to ask this one because I want to bring this up, because this one is a bit counterintuitive. Earlier, we talked about how there's a mountain of content that says, here's the right way to strategically execute, and that stuff gets ignored by a lot of leaders. The data in the report actually reveals, which is fascinating, that larger, more institutionalized companies consistently outperform smaller, nimbler, more agile organizations at strategy execution, right? And this totally flies in the face of what we tend to believe is true about organizational agility. Rigid processes, standardized rhythms, boring operational discipline doesn't sound like the modern way to work, and yet it seems to be really powerful, at least with the data coming out of the report. So question, we'll start with Lola and then Manish, and we'll make the answers pretty quick to hand over back to Ellie. What if the secret to adapting quickly and improving your execution isn't flexibility or agility at all, but rather having such a disciplined execution system that you can use it to pivot the organization with a lot more precision? Is that a realistic result potentially? Lola, what do you think?
I've heard of this thinking, right, in the past, and I've thought there is value, and especially in larger companies. I feel like, when I think of Givaudan, right, the quality systems we have, or the global orchestration of the supply chain that we have, unless we have that, is impossible if the market change in any way that we will be able to adapt to it. As much as, probably on a day-to-day, sometimes we feel like this, that we are in this heavy machine that is low in the very short term, but it really gives you that speed, collective speed, when you talk about the mid-long term. But it's interesting because I was having a conversation with my sister, who's been later on more in startups, and she said that she also suffered as a startup company for the lack of certain structure and rigidity. So I was kind of neglecting that this was more for like larger and corporate companies, but she said, no, actually, even to some point, I don't know if I should be saying that, but she said like we had such a disorganized that we tried to even implement OKRs and we were neglecting them. So I was just like, obviously we didn't kind of go a lot more in details into that. But I don't think it's the only answer either, because I do think like, there's the elements of resilient culture, there's the elements of having a really empowered teams that can take decisions. All those things will also play a game. Because at the end, yeah, you said agility without discipline is chaos, but also maybe discipline without openness may risk irrelevance. So I think it has its value, it needs its own place, but it's not a standalone success either.
Yeah, it's interesting. Manish, what have you seen? You've worked in a variety of different companies.
Yeah, real quick, I think again, I don't think team size or company size is like a variable to like really think about whether somebody is going to be more successful in structured sort of like strategy execution craft versus not. Jeff, like my idea is that a lot of it is like for smaller startups, like my understanding is that a lot of them are actually like all in execution mode. Strategy is clear, it's set by the founder in most cases, and they're hyper focused on execution. So that actually like rules out some of these things that we were talking about for like small startups. So I wonder whether we're comparing apples and oranges, and so I'm going to be really curious about like Ellie's response in terms of how he saw the data come through. But my sense is that all companies, irrespective, will need to actually like really thread the needle between strategy and execution, right? Like, and I think this is why we do this job, is because I think we see that those bridges need to be created, those processes need to be set up, those systems need to be created. And that's what actually will differentiate companies, is where you are able to create a full loop, as you call them, Jeff, right? Or learning loops in terms of like seeing them, adapting to them, iterating on them, and actually like making the organization grow with it.
Right. It's a good challenge. It's a good challenge to the question, right? Are we actually comparing the right things here? So, Ellie, you get the last word on this, and then you can bring us home.
Yes, so I can think of the analogy of the boats. So I feel today I'm a lot in transport vehicle, but anyways, so think about you're in a small boat with your team, and then someone say, "Hey, let's go to the right." Then everyone hears it. It's very easy to move to the right, and the boat is flexible. It moves fast. Think about now you have a large, big boat. Already there is inertia. When you need to move, it takes some time and energy. So of course you can go faster and you can go further, but it takes more energy to move and it's slower. But imagine if someone say, "Hey, let's go to the right." The person in the back of the boat didn't hear it. The person in the bottom of the boat didn't hear it. So it takes a bit more organization and structure to create a certain form of agility in larger organization than smaller. I think that's why we can see that smaller organizations tend to have lower strategy execution maturity. A lot of it is intuitive and is not necessarily required. You don't need to have like a large or well set up governance if you have 5 people in the team. It becomes a must when you are becoming bigger. If we look at now the second theme, for me, it's the theme of agility. I think a lot of people romanticize a bit agility as freedom from structure and full flexibility. My experience there is that if this is not set up with some form of structure, then it creates a lot of confusion and chaos. So we change priorities all the time, we start stuff, we don't finish them, etc., etc. And so I think this is why it's critical for companies to be adaptable. But to be adaptable, well, you need a certain level of structure and discipline. And for that, here I have 3 metrics from the research. The first one is the goal setting cadence. So to give some time to define goals that are actually going to be our priorities for a certain amount of time, but then change them after, I don't know, say 3-4 months, and give some space to reflect on that and be able to adapt towards the next period and communicate it across the teams and the organization. The second part, which I think is really the 101, is the weekly and bi-weekly check-ins. And you can see here 96 versus 27%. So top performers do have this hygiene to actually create a space to discuss how things are going and what we can do differently. If things are moving well, great. If things are not moving well, why? What can we do about it? And that's really, really the big differentiator, I believe, to create a system that is adaptable, agile, but at the same time doesn't need to be over bureaucratic. And this is where I think we need to get away from procedure for procedure, process for process. But having a certain level of structure is indeed important. The last one is about retrospective. So reflect and reset. Take some time at the end of a project or of a cycle or of the year to really make it systematic, to learn from there and basically grow as an organization, as a team, but also within our competence. And this is how we can, well, take into account, hey, we underestimated this, or we overestimated that, or we didn't see this, we didn't see that. Let's take it into account for the future. But yeah, hey, thank you so much, first, Jeff, for your hosting and creating a space for this conversation.
Pleasure.
And Manish and Lola, it's great to have practical experience from what you do on a day-to-day from the field. So thank you so much for that. I think we can maybe wrap up with a takeaway. And for me, the main takeaway for today is that strategy execution maturity is the strongest predictor of strategic performance. And it's trainable. That's the good news. It's trainable. It's not a work of luck. It's something we can put intention as an organization, as professional, and we can make a change. Truth is that years over years, we've been actually working with a lot of organizations and leaders, and they share with us time and time again the same thing. We have a strategy, we have initiative, but somehow it doesn't connect. So organizations work super hard, teams are super busy, but somehow, somewhat, impact doesn't match the ambition. And so they reach out to us and they ask, hey, let's implement OKRs, or hey, let's help us execute better. And we do what we always do. We start by understanding what's the situation. And the truth is that organizations don't know what they don't know. They feel the symptom, so they will have too many priorities, they will be misaligned, or they will have a transformation fatigue, but they don't know what's the real root cause behind that. And that's the real problem. And that's what we wanted to solve. So here comes the reveal, because over the last 18 months, we've been working with our partners, with the experts, to answer one key question. What truly drives strategy excellence, strategy execution excellence? And we actually benchmarked, we researched, we looked for patterns, we identified common habits of top performers. We shared some of them here, the others are in the benchmark. And we discovered something that I found very powerful. There is a way to measure how well your company executes strategy. There is a way to know and understand where you are, what's holding you back, and what you can do about it. Not based on opinions, based on data, based on evidence, and based on experience. So today we are launching something entirely new, a new way to see your organization, a new way to improve your impact. We are launching Strategy Execution Maturity 360. This is the first research-backed assessment that will allow you to understand where you are, what's holding you back, and what you can do about it. All of this by benchmarking yourself with your peers. It's simple, it's practical, and it's designed to spark meaningful change fast. So more than words, I'm going to share with you a short video. I'm going to come back to you right now. So that's about Strategy Execution Maturity 360. That's the third element of the suite that we started launching in September. It's available now. I think the team has already shared in the chat the link. You can do the assessment. It takes 7 minutes. It's free, and you will get a report to know where your organization is and what you can do about it. I want to take the opportunity to thank again all the experts that have been involved in that. Of course, this is a teamwork, especially Tristan Pelou, who is doing a PhD on the topic and has been leading the charge across the last months. And I also want to thank the partners that join us, Profit.co and Workboard, and that allow us to actually create even more of an industry movement over here. So Strategy Execution Maturity 360, the aim is not to give you just a tool, not to give you just a product, but to give you a path so that you can reach strategy execution excellence. This is today the start of the journey. We are getting out with it, but certainly we're going to have many more stories coming soon. So thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Jeff, for joining. Thank you, Lola. Thank you, Manish. For everyone here that is connected, feel welcome to join us for our on tour, as we've been in Finland and France already. We are going in Belgium on Friday, in the Netherlands and in the UK beginning of November, in Africa and Australia and Spain towards the second part of November and December. So the journey continues. Thank you all for connecting today. We are in touch. Don't hesitate to connect on LinkedIn with all of the speakers, with me. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any question to the team, to myself. And I wish you a good end of the day in Europe, a good beginning of the day in the US and Americas. And we see you soon. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.